You are listening to a podcast. Not just any podcast, but the 61st podcast of the Something on My Mind program. I am David.
And I am Cindy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast. In this show, we like to use our professional backgrounds to cover all things finance, and we like to mix in some offbeat stories to give you a break from everyday reality.
And it's our mission to improve your financial fitness, and we like to do all of this with a little side of humor.
A couple of show notes for you. You can follow us on all social media platforms, including Instagram at SOMM.podcast. And we now have started to blow up our TikTok a bit, so go join us there for some fun, quirky videos. And of course, we are on YouTube now, so find us there if you're an audio person. So what are we going to talk about this week? And our main topic has to do with student loans. Now, this is not an uncommon subject, but we're going to talk about the state of student loans and what could happen based on the White House and Congress and see if there's any chance of things changing. Now, for our stories section, we're going to get into two things related to students. Maybe they can save some money because one of them's a 4-year-old girl who is in the UK who has a Mensa score as high as Einstein's, and she's only this big of a little girl. It's crazy. So we're going to talk about that briefly and maybe what she can do for their family so they don't have to pay student loans. And then we're also going to talk about something a little bit different, which is about, because we were in Chicago last weekend, about how they're launching feral cats to go out and kill the rat population. So we'll tie that back into student loans a little later in the show. All right, so cool. So now we're going to get into the round table, and so I'm going to keep going. I'm on a roll. I got my subjects, and I think everybody can join in on this one, including our lovely producers back there.
Ooh,
so there you go.
Right.
Got Tara and Justin, and doing a fabulous job for the show, so we're really having a lot of fun lately. And so I wanted to get into pet peeves. Okay, and everybody has them, so we really want to have a good dialogue here. And so I'm going to give you a couple real quick because I always complain about Costco when I go there. And the number one thing is the people who don't put their carts away, and you might be one of them listening or viewing this, but what happens is those carts, they roll into like my car or someone else's car. And so today I'm pulling into the parking lot, and there's this, again, an old guy again. I don't want to keep running into old people, even though I do such great Boy Scout
They're everywhere,
things.
David.
Oh, well.
I
yeah.
mean, I'm just saying.
They're getting prescriptions, but he's got his door open, and I'm like halfway into the slot, and so he knows I'm waiting. He's like, oh, like cool. So he comes up and moves the cart that's in the top right corner of my light, if you will,
Right.
which is great. But he only moves it between two other cars, which there's like 2 inches between those, meaning the car
That
corral's
makes me
30.
mad.
I know the car corral is only 30 feet away. So he only moved it so my car wouldn't hit the cart, meaning it's pretty much going to bump into the other
That's
car.
terrible.
And so I was like, wait a minute. Well, thank you, but
No, thank you.
like, can you just put your cart away?
No, remember, I don't know, maybe we talked about this a long time ago on one of our first podcasts, but there was a time that you and I were like the parking lot supervisors everywhere we went. We decided our job was to be the people that were taking other people aside, saying like, you need to put your cart away. And people were so upset with us, but we were stopping people. I think one day I remember coming out of, I don't even know, the grocery store, and you were standing in the middle of the parking lot aisle, blocking somebody from driving to make them put their cart away.
Here's how this.
Wasn't that it?
I was waiting for you to come out of the store, but this guy did the same thing, and the cart rolled down this
Oh,
little hill
that's right.
into another
Okay,
car. He was basically hitting carting and running away. I don't know what you call that. A cart and run.
Yeah.
But he was going to get in his car and leave, and I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Like, it's not like a car accident, but that's going to damage that person's car. I'm not letting you leave. You're not getting away with it. So either get your plate or you stay until the person comes out.
Super inconsiderate. I mean, I just think it is. We have a habit. We always make sure you get in the car, you kind of back up by the cart corral. I make sure that I pull the cart over there, and that's it. It's such a easy thing to do, and maybe that's not easy for someone elderly. Okay, so let's give him. However,
but I'm there to put the cart away for
but
them.
I'll have to say, he did just walk into the store, shopped around the store, walked out to his car. If the cart corral's 10 to 15, even 20 feet away, he just did a whole marathon through a store. So I don't.
He was with his
I
wife.
can't find a whole
they
big
were both,
excuse
they were
to
just
that.
Fine. They were just fine.
Pet peeve.
So that's my pet peeve, and I don't know. I park right.
I have too
I park right next to it so that I don't have to go a long distance. So then I'm getting the exercise anyway. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, I got 100 for Costco alone, but I'm not going to do that. But if you have one,
weren't you like scrapping with somebody though? I mean, I remember a couple times I came out and you're yelling. You're in a yelling match
because those carts are running into my car.
I know.
I mean, I don't go out. I'm a huge guy, so I
Let's ask our.
Go out and kick the crap out of people.
We need to ask our producer. Did they put the carts back?
I always put the cart back.
You do?
And I was at Meijer recently, and I drove by an open spot. And what was stopping everyone from parking in that spot? There was like 3 carts just dead center in the spot, and I was pissed.
I put the cart back.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it just seems like the right thing.
I mean,
well, and I put other people's if I'll take it. You don't want to walk it back. I will always just take. When people put it up on the curb, and then you're like trying to open your car door, and it's even if there's like one of those little medians and curves, and they'll take the time and hassle to hike it up onto the curb or the median. Just walk it back into the store.
Well, and it's like, I'm not trying to inconvenience these grocery store workers. I know their life is already annoying. Like, I hear it's terrible at a grocery store. Right. Why would I just throw it all over the place?
Exactly.
I also treat it like a game. As I'm getting like 10 feet away from the corral, I see how far away I can push it in and make it in a little slot and land it in the other cart in front of it.
So I swear I do that too.
And it's always a fun little game, and it always works.
Know.
Well, the other thing you can do is just get a good speed going, and I jump on it and I skateboard.
I have seen you. I think David just when Haley and I, when she was home through Coronacation, and we would go out shopping as a threesome. Poor kid, she always got stuck, but she's like, "Sure, I'll go to Home Depot with you," because she was so bored. But we would be there, and we like, was that David just flying by on a cart? And it was just be like. You just going by on your little cart, going to the cart corral, but like a little kid.
That is me.
I know.
I have a pet peeve you guys would be proud of.
What?
You instilled it in me.
What's that?
And it's when people leave the lights on in rooms that they're not in.
It makes me want to die.
It kills
your
me inside.
grandfather, my father,
especially as someone
so
who
happy to hear that.
Pays for electricity in my own apartment now, and when people leave the light on in rooms and then just leave, or like the TV, like you just turn the TV on and you're done with it, so you just leave the room and then you leave the TV on. Like, the electronics that stay on are now a pet peeve of mine, all because I used to do that.
Oh, really? No way.
And I was
reprimanded
enough.
That's why when I redid your bathroom, I put a timer on the dimmer, so it would go off.
But the bottom line is, no, it's hurting your pocketbook, so you can relate. This is so awesome because kids grow up in spite of themselves. We've always said that. And now you maybe can have a little bit of sympathy or empathy with the parental situation.
It is truly a financial tip. Like,
yes,
when we were leaving our lights on and our air on and things on, the cost was significantly higher a month.
Well, when you go to work and nobody's in the house, talking about just the cost now, segueing into that, turn your air so it's not blowing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's just common sense and logic. I love the air on when I come home, but the bottom line is that's just a financial burden at that point.
Exactly.
That's a good pet peeve. I am proud.
Actually, I just looked this up and we had a personal finance tip of the week, number 13, and how to save money on your electric bill.
All right. So I do have a couple of pet peeves. I don't know what kind of time we have, but I was actually looking a few up that I know that I can relate to, but and there's nobody in the movie theaters anymore, but people that talk through movies, and that is you, David. You are my pet peeve in a movie, and everybody agrees in this house. Have you guys been to a movie with David?
No, but I would do the exact same thing. I get bored. I have to comment.
Oh, David's on his phone. I hate when you're on your phone.
You're on your phone?
Oh. Yeah.
I'm not on my phone.
Well, before the movie starts, but you are the.
Well, that's fine. What?
Okay. Well, maybe
every week this reveals something. Cindy's totally saying that's false. This is great.
I believe it.
I might go whisper, say, "Hey, dude, that's so and so."
It's not a whisper because Chase and Haley will look like, "Stop talking so loud."
I mean, I will say this. I do talk. I don't see anybody turning around saying, please be quiet. But
it's because we're doing it for them.
You know what? This is fine. You know what? I'm just going to go to the movie with Tara.
Okay.
I like to put on a show for everyone else in the theater.
You do?
They're already there for a show.
I know. Double feature.
How about here's a couple. No, I dug up a list here, so we'll go through a couple of
Just
these.
a couple.
And we'll move on. But
I have
do you know anybody, Cindy, that talks with their mouth full?
Mm-mm.
I could think of someone. I won't mention by names, but a family member.
I do. Haley hates it.
I don't think that's what he's referring to.
Haley hates it because the whole Corona, before we would put our Jeopardy on, first of all, I hate hearing other people chew. So that would be the silence of everybody starting dinner. And then I would go to turn and talk to her, and she would just get so mad so mad at me.
Here's a good one.
Go south.
Here's a good one I like. Saying no offense after something insulting.
Yeah.
Right?
No offense, but.
So you start off by saying, basically, I'm going to insult you. And I remember like maybe 8 years ago when these guys were much younger and they started throwing out the end of just saying.
I'm just saying.
I hated that you guys hated that.
But you guys said that at every sentence.
They would constantly, like, nothing we could say. If it was like a just saying, like they were, I don't know, they really.
We were up your butts.
You may not remember this, but we said, listen, there's a fine jar, like a swear jar kind of thing. If you put that in,
I was in the swear jar.
You chuck in a quarter. And at the time, a quarter meant a lot.
I think we did have a swear jar, too.
Because it was because you had to go in there, like, I have to give away a quarter. I might have only like $100 in my bank account. So even a quarter meant something. And then there was very little in the jar. It worked pretty well.
I used to have $3 a week, and each day or whatever was like 2 quarters, and it was my TV time because I watched too much TV. It was a tough time for me.
And you know what? The funny thing is, go figure. You have a podcast that talks about watching shows.
Exactly.
I did major in TV.
Oh,
so
that's true.
It makes sense.
Just saying.
Oh, here's another one. Just saying about how children cry on planes.
Oh.
And I know people have babies and they travel, but when you're on a plane, they're like, you're already on a plane because travel's not great and it's hot and now there's no like more anticipated germs floating around.
Right.
And so when you get on there and like you hear a baby crying for a 4-hour flight. And
I feel for that person because I remember taking Justin, he was little, like 2, maybe 3, no, probably 2. And we were flying to Chicago. So I didn't want to buy a ticket, so they allowed me to put him on my lap, and the whole time, his little foot, boom, 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 in front of the people in front of me, and I was just mortified. And then that was the trip that there was turbulence so bad, I thought we were going down. And then he started screaming, and then he was kicking, and I was like, this is just bad.
You know,
do you remember that, Justin?
Well, I was a baby, like you said.
Yeah, but you have some weird memory.
No, I don't remember.
You have a memory bank that's beyond my comprehension.
I can't lie. I do remember flying to Las Vegas and my ears. Oh my God, my ears popping was like I was probably like 3 years old, and I just have such a vivid memory of the worst pain.
Yeah,
landing in this airplane with my ears not popping. But that's all.
All right, there's this giant list. I think we're going to have to come back to this another time because there's actually some pretty good ones in here, and everybody has a little story on it. So,
well, my pet peeve is being late, so I don't want to be late for the next segment of our podcast.
Because I was going to finish this last one up, but we don't have time about how you leave the toilet seat. But okay, so we're going to move on to the finance. We're going to we got to go. We're running out of time.
You're dissing me. My underwear, the toilet seat. People are going to think we don't like each other.
And then you threw in some crap last week about how I'm a big farter, which was not true because you were pissed because you got called out about underwear. All right. Even the guy we interviewed with the podcast last night listened to that episode. He thought it was really funny and agreed that underwear doesn't go on the top of a toilet seat.
I know. He did. We had to call it out. All right, let's move along.
Let's get to the financial topic this week. And this is all about a student's favorite subject, student loan debt.
Yeah. So, obviously, we have talked ad nauseum probably about our kids coming out of college and all the costs. And we did a whole episode on that. What's next? Part of that, a little very brief segment of that what's next was the student loan debt part of it. And we talked about refinancing and that piece of it, but we haven't really covered sort of all the logistics around student debt and borrowing to pay for your education. So
yeah, and I think it's because it's pretty simple. It's like, well, just go refinance. But we wanted to go through some of the things that are coming up that by way of Congress or what Biden said he would do, and maybe some possible solutions and some things that are being thrown out there. And just maybe a little understanding around the entire subject. So,
absolutely.
So B.Y. will say, before you get started,
sure.
Tara, please pull up a graph for this as Cindy gets into this, because we're going to show some stats coming up here in a second, if you don't mind. But go ahead. You were going to talk about.
So that's a pretty big incline there. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, student loan borrowers in the United States owe a collective $1.73 trillion in federal and private student loan debt as of that first quarter of 2021. Holy moly.
Right. So here's the two things that are almost always prevalent. And maybe there was a dip during the pandemic, but for the most part, the things that always go up with inflation, regardless of what the inflation is doing as an overall,
right,
is oil and tuition. And so look at 2007 there. $18,233 for the historical federal student loan debt. And now you go into 13 years later and look at the price. It's doubled. $36,635.
It rises almost 9% a year.
Exactly.
It's insane. So imagine with low inflation, we had the financial crisis, we had the pandemic, and still the cost goes up. Even though like some institutions last year like froze tuition for a certain time, or people were complaining about taking classes online that they shouldn't pay as much.
Yeah, some people did get credits back, but that was not a significant amount overall to detract from the giant student
Yeah, you know, it sounds like you owe money and you can't get it out.
I swear, it's not enough to detract from the giant student
You can do it. Little engine that could.
Right?
The giant student loan debt.
Let me move on.
All right, so then let's go through some stats are based off this graph there from education.org. And the average monthly student loan debt for the class of 2021, which means the monthly cost will be $433. So the average household income is it's $68,000. That's two incomes, if you will, or all incomes. So if you're coming out, you're not making that kind of money typically. $433 is a lot. That's a car payment or then some for many students at a young age. And then per borrower, the student loan debt is about $37K. So that's crazy.
It really is. I mean, that's a significant amount when you're trying to come out of college, get a job, and then, you know, maybe you're getting a job that equates to that amount of debt in terms of your income or salary. When you're starting out, it just depends on what you are going into or what field, but you're not coming out making high salary typically as a person competing in the job market.
Even a lot of people who go to a law firm out of Harvard are making in the 60s or so. Like you have to really be a specialized person to come out with, and that's not top of the line money, if you will. For again, it's not as much as the household income. So no, it doesn't work out.
Not at all.
We have a system that is saddled with making somebody have debt when they come out, so they have trouble getting started. That's like you're already against the grain. You're destined to be pushed back or even fail.
Absolutely. And student loan debt at graduation has increased 76% since the class of 2000. That's a growth rate that outpaces the rate of inflation by 41%.
So we're back to the inflation again,
exactly.
Right?
So after adjusting for that, the average student loan debt at graduation has increased 326% since 1970.
Yeah, I mean, every time you read one of these numbers, it's that much more sickening. But since 2003, here's the last stat: the national student loan debt balance has grown by 602.5%. That's crazy. So let's get into some thought process here. Tara has another graph up here, and we did a sample planning college analysis. And this is something you do through your line of work that can help people who are, planning out their future. And so what you have here is a chart based on two kids going to school.
Well,
right?
We have little Justin and little Chase, and we put them at age 6 and 3. And oftentimes we have clients, of course, coming to us that really have no concept about the inflation costs of tuition. So, you think you're saving enough, or you're not saving at all. So if you don't have a 529 or some type of college savings plan, this is a pretty harrowing outlook looking at the cost of tuition as it goes up. And I think what we just showed was this cost of inflation. So what we did, we've got this chart up here, and we said, let's look at Michigan State. Then let's look at University of Michigan, Central Michigan, Oakland University, and Western. These are all pretty much our local state colleges, but U of M, even though it's not Ivy League, it's considered on that sort of that Ivy League status.
It's a very respectable
It's
school.
a very respectable. I mean, kids come from all over the country. They hope to get into U of M.
All over the world.
All over the world, exactly. So what we did is we said by the time that Justin at 6 and Chase at 3 are of college age, so many clients say, what do I need to save on a monthly basis? And I think that number is it's like sticker shock, because you're looking at today's cost. So going into the cost of inflation, by the time they're in college, this chart's going to show what a 4-year cost of is for each of these schools. So Oakland U is basically a commuter school, but you're still looking at $337,000 for 4 years for the cost of tuition. So the monthly savings needed on just that alone would be $672.
Actually, it's $237, but still a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Check that.
$237. Yep.
Well, here's the thing. It's a lot to listen to here on the audio side of this, but if you took Justin at 6 and Chase at 3, and even let's just go to Michigan State at the top here, you would need to save $1,323 in order for them to both have college paid for both of them.
Yeah.
Every single month.
Yeah, that's a mortgage payment.
It's for many people that's a mortgage payment.
And there's families across America cannot afford to do that. Very few people can have that extra cost built into their budget. Yet, we want to set our kids up for college. We want to give them the best opportunity. And I mean, really, I say save whatever you can, start saving. And ultimately, we kind of look back, and even my mom said, all the little toys and pieces and plastic things that I used to buy for the kids, we kind of, in retrospect, wish that we would have maybe taken some of that money and then some for the toys and some just put in the bank, put towards college.
Well, I would have appreciated it.
What?
I said I would have appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And you don't think about it. You really don't. It's like saving for retirement. And it's another misnomer of, I have all this time. But when you do these college analysis, it really is a eye-opening sticker shock.
I mean, I have college loan debt, and I don't even think about it, and I already have the debt. So to think about it when you're 18 years out with your children it's tough.
So
and if you have little kids, the chances are you're still accumulating your wealth. So you're growing in your job. Maybe one of the, family members, maybe the husband or the wife, are staying home to try to raise kids to even combat the cost of daycare. So oftentimes I know people say, look, daycare is going to be more expensive than me staying home. So now you've got one salary working, maybe just to make ends meet or just cover the cost and retire, save, do all of that.
Depending on the salary, some people don't work a job. A lot of times it's the mom, but not necessarily. More dads are now where they don't work the job because the math doesn't work out for them to send them to daycare based on their salary. Well, so they're just, again, they're against a lot of not pushing the boulder up the hill because they just don't simply make enough money to do that, let alone put away for college. So for full disclosure, we gave Chase, Haley, and Justin a flat number.
Right.
And I thought it was a pretty nice number.
Mm-hmm.
And so it should cover most of their college.
Worked better for some more than others.
Well, the one that graduated in 3 years is like, woohoo! Can you cover my last 4th year of living expenses since I saved you on a 4th year of college?
Yeah, she's like pocketing money, and I'm owing more.
But yes and no. I mean, don't just use it. But now, here's the deal: if Chase's number exceeds Haley's, then Haley gets that money back. That's the point. If you don't use the number we gave you, then we shouldn't necessarily give you the money. But then someone says, well, Justin needs all of that money, so we should get the rest of it too. So we'll try to hammer that out later. The whole point is your 2 colleges are paid for. You're cool. Justin has a little bit more to go on his own. So,
well, and I have people that have asked me saying, I don't have that kind of debt I don't have that kind of money saved up for that kind of debt, I should say. And ultimately, they get to the point where their kids are going off to college. I just had this conversation with someone, and he said, is it better to drain any cash that I have or take from my investments? My answer was no, because if they're just entering college, you can get into student loan debt. You can apply for student loans and then invest that money through that 4 years time and still earn off of that if it's not to keep your liquidity or, to keep that money invested in the market or whatever interest or dividends that you're earning on it, because they're going to get out of school and they still have 6 months with which to pay that loan back. So you can accumulate. This is what I always say. Don't take from that pile of money that you're investing, saving, and growing if you can avoid it. So maybe there are experts out there that might disagree, but I say it gives you the latitude to invest and grow and save during that time, and then worry about it if you have to take a student loan out anyway.
No, if you don't have to pay anything, sometimes loans have a little bit of interest that accumulates. Depends what kind of loan you get. But if a Parent Plus loan, for example, which a lot of they do because the kids can only get so much, so the parents have to foot the bill and the rest of it or co-sign for that. They're not paying an interest on those loans, and typically, at least that's what we did, because it's exactly what we wanted to do, is let that investment grow for 4 years plus the additional 6 months, and then we turn around and here you go, here's the money. So why not let it grow and don't detract from the compound interest?
Well, and by the way, here's another thing that we didn't really even talk about before when we talked about just the preparedness for going. We really haven't talked about the preparedness for going into college, which I really want to do that episode. Your kids are coming out of college or coming out of high school. What do they need to know and learn as a collective group in your family going into that next phase? But at the end of the day, and I'll just talk about this briefly, is when you're going into college, this is the time you should be applying for scholarships and going and competing for scholarships. Ultimately, Haley did that because she was just like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try it. Well, she ended up getting a lot of scholarship money, which helped really take down the cost of her college debt. So
that's a huge thing I didn't do when I was in high school that they encouraged us to do is look, there's websites, there's databases.
Thousands.
Yeah, they're just giving money away.
You would not believe the amount of scholarships that they give for the most obscure things. So I remember when she was looking, that's what we were looking at, is just applying. She just applied for all kinds of scholarships. And the other thing, which we could go into another time, is AP classes. That takes down the time you're in college. So
maybe we can do that in one of our episodes about high school prep for college.
That's what I want to do.
Actually,
I really do.
I've had a couple of people reach out to me in some sites about who went out and got, one girl got about $500,000 in scholarships.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we should bring on a guest here pretty soon regarding that. So we can look into that deeper to get
I think that would be
tips.
Great.
So the big question I have to that is, why give away one $500,000 scholarship when
she just went and applied to multiple.
It was in total.
That's what I'm saying, because there's so many obscure scholarships out there. People don't even apply for them.
Well, and if you're a person of color or in some minority group, there's plenty of opportunities for scholarships for those groups of people. And there really is a lot out there to offer.
I mean, it's not even relegated to just that. You would be amazed at the amount of scholarships just for the strangest things out there.
All right, so we went on for a little bit. Why don't we get into some meat here and talk about some things about maybe what's going on in the current world, not about what we could do.
Well, and they're talking about public student loan forgiveness, right? So that's actually a federal program designed to encourage students to enter relatively low-paying careers like firefighting or teaching or government jobs, nursing, which isn't necessarily a low-paying career, but public interest law, and even the military.
Yeah, so basically public service, government-based types of things, right? So then after, 10 years, they can get forgiveness. So you're in one of those fields, good for you. And if you can hack it for 10 years, it's probably the best thing going, to be honest, at this moment. So
yeah, I mean, after that, they'll qualify you for that whole tax-free forgiveness. Forgiveness.
Yeah, so the money that's not charged that was taken off, forgiven, will not be taxed. So, all All right, so let's get into like what happened during the campaign, because this is when it came up during Biden's campaign about student loan forgiveness. And he was running on part of his ticket to say that he would give away $10,000 of relief to every student, like across the board. That's the way I've understood it and read. And now we're at May 24th. He was sworn in on I think it's January 20th for the president. And so nothing's happened, but there's a lot swirling, and it's not necessarily going so well at this moment. Not much has really happened. Now, technically, into this
How are you going to do that?
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But
my debate on this.
We'll get to that. But basically, he's looking in to see if he has the power through an executive order to do this. And it's sounding more and more as we go through this a little further that he's really punting. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see where that goes. But right now, things aren't looking so good, even though I think some of this stuff's going to come to fruition next week. And he has left this out of his budget plan. So there's nothing for forgiveness. So we already know that's true. That's a public piece of record. And so we're going to see what's going to happen here. All right, so let's keep going here, and let's look at more into the state of things now with the average people dealing with that, not so much the Biden thing right now. We'll get back to that in a minute. But where's everybody at? Because the pandemic really caused some problems.
Yeah, I mean, before the pandemic, 80% of Americans with federal student debt were either unable to pay it or were paying their balances, but those balances were going up. Basically, there was a petition launched called Student Loan Justice in 2005 by Alan Collins, if I'm saying that right. And as of this podcast, requiring student loan payments has been halted. So we know through September 30th, along with 0% interest. So you can still opt to pay in, but you have to actually opt in and keep those payments.
Yeah, so that helps with some relief because we know that people already struggle to manage some of these payments in the first place before this even happened. So now here's the other side of the coin is that Congress wants to get involved. And so like Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, and AOC, they're like some of the big names. They've been pressuring to give $50,000 in relief in student loan debt. And so, again, that hasn't happened. And the more that, I've been digging in the stories of late, and they're all over the map here, but it's saying that basically Biden's, like I said a little earlier, that he's punting. It looks like he doesn't want to deal with this. He wants to, have the Congress deal with it rather than him doing it. So it doesn't look great.
So I keep going back to this. We've had this debate in our house. I've had this debate with others. How do you determine who qualifies for this forgiveness if it's offered for $10,000 to $50,000 range?
Well, no, he does have some proposals, and so on top of canceling the debt, if that doesn't happen, he has a free undergraduate tuition for students who meet certain requirements. And so this gets back to like the student loan, this gets back to more like the stimulus checks where there might be like an income threshold, right? So right now, this reads as that income needs to be below $125,000 to qualify for a 2 or 4 year college or universities, except if you go to like a private, historically black college or a minority serving institution. So, and again, that makes sense. So I'm thinking about this. I don't like this. It would be cool if it happened, but that means they're binning it under the household. So if Justin's in college and it's a $125,000 limit, does that mean, well, since Justin lives with us, that means if we made more than that, he wouldn't qualify. But
even though I'm paying, and it does, I would be paying.
That's the whole premise of what my debate. I can't argue it. I'm just debating the fact that the parameters have to be so big. So is it for people that are paying now? What about the people in the past? What about the people in the future? Or is it just relegated to, okay, we have this span of time through the pandemic that has put a tremendous hardship on everybody, from parents trying to pay these student loans, and, what about Parent Plus loans in that case, down to kids that are paying this on their own? Or what about households that do make $125,000 or more, but the parents said, okay, I'm going to make you pay the student loan.
All right, so this is what I would do then. If I knew this was a role, let's say, hey, Justin, we are making sure you separate from us.
Right.
You have a separate address, even though you might be up at school. We're going to find a way to make you your own individual, so then your own household income will certainly be below that number. And that way you can qualify. That's the kind of move I would do.
Well, and I also look at it as, what about the families that can afford to pay, or they're just, maybe there's a aunt or uncle or grandparent that is paid, or, Chase had someone in his family pass away and there was college tuition built into the trust. And
you can't get into that. It's got to be, listen, if I have outstanding debt, this is what they're going to do. They're not going to say, probably, if I've already paid it, they're not going to give you any money unless maybe it's in that current year. So it's got to be some kind of thing across the board for each bracket. They can't just go and make decisions based on because, Tara got inheritance or Justin got inheritance or something like that. It can't do it. The simplest
kind of like a child tax credit where it's just a certain portion built in.
It should be.
It has to be.
If you're going to do it, it's going to be like this. Everybody gets X amount of dollars. I don't care if your kid went to Harvard or not. If you have a student loan or Parent Plus loan or whatever qualifies, which private student loans probably won't. That's what their buzzword is. Either way, across the board, if it were $50,000, you say gets $50,000 now, and we're done. And that way, no one can complain because everybody got the same number. At least in terms of people keeping them from bitching about it, that would, in my opinion, the best way to do it.
I just think that there's too many student loans. There's too many people in college. You just have to set some. I just don't even see how this could work out.
Well, this is
and cool. I'd love for it to work out for people like Justin, who does have a little portion of his student loan that he has to pay for.
Portion.
A
little portion. So here's cool thing right here. So I pulled up some stats, and this is
his head before
this is from NerdWallet. And Tara, nice job on the graph there. So, or the table there. And so this is really crazy when we talk about this for a second. So this lists all the types of loans out there. So direct loans, there's almost 36 million borrowers. FFEL loans, 11 million. Perkins loans, 1.7. Total federal loans, 42.9. So if you add all of those up, that's what? 46, 47, 48, 49. Oh my gosh. Like you're talking, and then you take the 20 million college students above this that is actually in college now. That's 110 million students.
Okay, times that average of $36,000.
No, let's look at it from this way. If you have 110 million borrowers and Biden said, here's $10,000 a piece. Now, I did a little math here, and if you multiplied 110 million by $10,000, that's 1.1 quadrillion. This means it'll never happen.
Inconceivable.
It's
not, but money's not real anyway.
Right.
So that's right.
That's right. So
that's so true.
So this is what it would happen is like they're gonna forgive the money. So this means the government's just not gonna collect the money they were owed.
They're already doing that. There's trillions of dollars of debt. It's like at this point, is it already not forgiven in the sense that there's so much debt out there that isn't being paid and they'll never get paid on, that technically that debt is forgiven? Like they're never collecting that money.
Well, there's actually, in the end of this, what can happen here is that if you welch on it, at least when you get into Social Security, they'll garnish your payments for student loans that you did not pay. Or if you file bankruptcy, it's also not qualification in terms of you can say, I can file for everything from my debts, but student loans are exempt, meaning they can still come after you for that money that you didn't pay.
Why?
That's so rude.
That doesn't make any sense.
So it's like if I have my money with SoFi, then in some cases they are going to have to pay money to SoFi or Citizens Bank, whoever does it. And then there's some cases where the loans are just accumulating and they're through the government, and those are the ones they just simply will forgive and not collect any money.
Well, some money they have to just go
some
after.
Money's still going to have to be paid out,
right?
If they do this. So I'm with you. I don't know how on earth they could even 10,000.
Don't know how they could figure this out. I think it's too far and wide.
Maybe we should stop treating people's education as a business and let our citizens be intelligent for free.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a whole extra podcast.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. So some of those repayment options that are under his plan, he's saying it's a little bit more liberal. Who makes less than $25,000 annually would not have to pay for their schooling.
Yep, and the other part of that was that if you exceed $25,000, then you would be in the 5% ration, ratio with your discretionary income. So that's what all you would be subject to, which is basically like essential spending, which is like groceries, housing, and food. Mm-hmm. So that is actually not a horrible plan.
No, and then after 20 years, the remainder of the loans would be forgiven, and there would be no income tax assessed on that forgiven loan amount. So keep in mind, there's 17 states that already offer tuition-free community college programs.
Yeah, so that's kind of what Tara was getting at a little bit, or Justin, about, hey, maybe not get involved so much. So if 17 states are involved, they're finding a way to make this work in their budgets. So maybe it's going to grow like gay marriage did in pot, and where the states do it on their own, and then eventually maybe it becomes a sweeping thing where the government can just take care of it nationally, because you can't rely on our government to do a lot of things. So I like this fact. So hopefully that's 1/3 of our total states. So that's encouraging. I think that's going to continue to grow. So if you could get 2 years free, that's a big deal. And
Absolutely.
Well, here's the other thing, though, is that if community college becomes a growing thing with this whole deal here, let's say every state did it, I think the community college program would strengthen, because you can't just go to school there and say, then I want to go to Duke, because they might not take your credits. Mm-hmm. So I think you might, in my opinion, it could strengthen the curriculum and the education standards, and you might get better students who can't afford it, and you might get better professors or people who work in their fields. Like it could really change the dynamic of things, because again, I just don't see where on earth the government's going to do it.
Well, even now, going to community college is significantly less money, and I just think that's a good, smart choice anyway. If maybe you're not ready to go into college on a full-time basis, maybe just from a maturity level or a financial level, even if you have to pay at this point. I mean, I think that's also a very smart choice that we might cover.
I went to community college and probably saved like $50,000.
Absolutely.
And I took, like, my friends who would go to OU, like right across the street, they're taking the exact same classes as me. They're harder, but it's like, I'm saving so much more money.
You are saving so much more money. And as long as that transfers into what you're going into in your ultimate curriculum.
You just got to know what you want to do in a way after like a year.
That's the hard part.
Or get your gen ed stuff out of the way at community college.
Well, you have to make sure, like I had a big issue with like math classes, like making sure they transferred over, but it's like, it's not that big of a deal.
What? And look where you are now.
Thriving.
Thriving behind this podcast.
That's right.
Using your degree.
She is actually using her degree.
That's actually true.
This would be nothing without her degree and your tenacity over there.
Here's one. Tenacity.
Unskilled but tenacious.
Unskilled, tenacious, and financially sound.
Me, not you.
That's right.
Well, here's one last thing I did think about, and I think we can hit the recap, is that I did read an article today, and it had to do with making sure you establish a system in the future that says, like, employers that can handle middle-class salaries and the ability to move up a little bit in companies. Maybe you're not working for the Microsofts of the world per se, but have it where employers don't need to require the degrees when they're not necessary in the jobs that they're doing, but they don't have to be somebody, if you will, pushing a broom or working on a line. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of work, just where you're stuck in pay sets where you're not going to get any higher than that typically, where I can go to a place, I don't need to use, I took calculus, I don't use it, for example. And that way it takes the pressure off of people even having to go to school as long for certain things. They can just focus on a concentration.
Well, and there are schools that also, or there are jobs, I should say, that also encourage you to go to school and help pay some of that tuition. So you do have options through some employers if you want to get a higher education or move on into some specialized certifications. If you get the grades, I know that there's some employers that will actually pay for that. So take advantage of that as well.
I mean, it's becoming more common, but it is such a small percentage. But it is growing because they know those are the needs of the people coming in, and one employer may attract over another employer for their candidates.
Well, and by the way, and this was new news to me until Haley started looking for her master's program. But if you go into a grad assistantship at a school and go into their master's program, so she's applying right now to a school. She got accepted to the master's program, but applying and getting an interview for the grad assistantship. If she gets that interview and gets that job, they'll pay for her master's. So she said, I'm not going to pay anything and make you guys pay for my master's program. I'll find a place that I can do that grad assistantship.
No, we don't pay for masters.
Well, no, she didn't. Well, she never even asked. She's like, I got this. But I mean, that's a whole additional option that if you want to get your postgraduate education, you could also do that.
Yeah, the bottom line, it's like Tara talking about scholarships earlier. It's hard. So there's some avenues you can get to, but man, you got to work your ass off, and the odds of getting some of these things happening for you, it's not great. But there's enough opportunity for you to get in where other people won't, because most people won't put in the time to do it anyway because the odds are so low.
Right.
I mean, there's millions of students, so if everybody did it, there's going to be a lot of people who would never make it. So if you're one that wants to work hard, usually quality, hard effort pays off.
It sure does.
All right, so like I said, let's hit the recap.
Okay, so number 1, pay your student loan debt, even if you have temporary forgiveness. If you have the means to do so, I would pay it. Otherwise, you're just extending what you owe.
That's correct. Now, another one, which is number 2, and some people don't think about this, but sometimes there's excess money left over. So you have your books and your room and board and your tuition, and hey, I got a couple grand left over. It happens. So try to refrain from paying anything outside what that money's intended to be used for, because what happens? You keep borrowing more money because you put it towards something else that it wasn't meant for.
And number 3, if you are waiting on the government to provide forgiveness and this money, please don't bank on it. Passing legislation can take years to months, and this is not a guarantee that any money will be provided.
Yep. Please don't wait on the government. Just, make your plan.
You just don't want to get into that cycle of extending anything out that you don't have to otherwise.
So this gets into number 4, and this is what I said, a few minutes ago with Justin here, is that, if you're in a budget grind, if you file bankruptcy or you just don't pay your loans, like you said, it'll hurt your credit. And now granted, when you're young, you don't care about Social Security at this point, but there are cases they will go after and garnish your money when you're in Social Security getting those benefit checks. So you can't be absolved from student loan debt if you file bankruptcy. Now, I will say one last piece to this. There are some cases that have popped up here and there where a judge has allowed this, but this is not the norm. And it's, again, I've only seen it in a few cases. So don't think you can go do this and just wipe it all out.
And number 5, we always say, make sure that you follow a budget and focus on those more essential items for your monthly living. For most people, there are opportunities to cut back on spending. We always talk about this. You have to look at your future goals. What is your budget? What is your plan? This is one of the biggest things that we always promote on this podcast and typically end with that message.
Yep. So if you do have a good budget and you've looked at everything, then just keep your nose to the grindstone. And if you get a few extra bucks here and there, then just keep kind of pecking away at it. I mean, you're just in a cesspool like the rest of us. So, or at least maybe Justin. So
this sounds bleak. Be nice.
All right. So that's going to do it for the financial tip, and we'll be moving on. All right, so now it's time to go to our stories this week, and we do have a theme a little bit, jumping off student loans, or in the case of this first one, how to make sure maybe someone doesn't have to pay student loans in this particular household, because this is from the Lad Bible. We do like this site. It has some really goofy, offbeat stories. However, this one's about a 4-year-old genius who scored below Albert Einstein in a Mensa test, but not by much. Like, again, a 4-year-old girl. So she's obviously a genius, and her name is Diel, if I'm saying it right.
You did not pass the Mensa test, if I'm saying it right.
No, I'm dyslexic. No, Dayal, Caur, Core. She's from Birmingham in the UK there, and it says, for example, she was able to name all the planets in the solar system when she was just 2, and has the word recognition and math abilities of a 5-year-old at that time. So getting a little further into this, she scored 142 on her IQ test, which was just below Einstein, but she was just 3.
I just can't even.
At the time. So it's crazy. She explains that Mensa, I guess her mother, that they only accept the top 5% in the UK, and she said she was in the top 0.01%. So she's just like, I don't know how this happens, but she's
and she's adorable. So Tara's got the story up on the screen. She just looks like the cutest little 4-year-old who happens to be a complete brainiac. And I mean, they said that she's just extraordinary, that she's a warm girl with an amazing sense of fun. And she said it's a real novelty to meet someone who's had such a high IQ that was so down to earth. That's the writer of this story. I mean, it is just going to be cool. I wish that we had the opportunity, and maybe we can somehow follow her, see if she has any social media to follow, just to see where she goes in life.
She's 4.
No, where she goes in life. I mean,
I was going to say, well, when we're doing this podcast 20 years later.
No, I'm saying like I'd love to just be able to see her grow and where she takes her life, because that's always what I thought when my kids were little, is where are they going to be? Where are these little brains that, I mean, Justin literally said his first word at 8 months.
I scored high on the Mensa test.
Like you did score.
So cool.
I mean,
as a child.
Wow.
by 1 year, you were talking in weird full sentences, running around the house. It was this anomaly.
Let me say something though. I may have scored high on that test, but I have a distinct memory that the test was done by sticking a Q-tip in my ear and pulling it out. So maybe I wasn't that smart.
What does that mean?
Wait, what is that?
Like, what does that
Why didn't I know that
mean?
until just now? And you're 25.
Hold on. Wait. I think we're following this.
Well, I took this like IQ test, and I remember them like being like, "You're smart," but then I just remember like the test they did was they just swabbed my ear, and they were like, "Yeah, you're smart," and so that's how I know that I'm not actually that
totally
smart.
a bad memory lie. That
It's like a
I
dream.
you went
that.
into a psychologist and took a full.
You took it to a What?
No way.
He just stuck a Q-tip
No,
in my
you're
ear and
right.
looked at it and said, "This
There's
kid's
no
a
way.
genius."
I'm sorry. You scored so high on that test going into that private school, and you were talking and saying like very difficult sentences very early on.
So that is, but the only thing he can take from this is a Q-tip in his ear.
Well,
I read just to go
and
off.
I just remember like my child's a complete genius.
There's a in a book you had a little journal for me from when I was a kid that I found recently, and I read a quote in there. It said, "You came home from work one day and you closed a $1 million account," and my response at like 4 years old was, "Wow, that's a very big account, and I'd like to have that one day."
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what you wrote as my quote
journal
in the
back,
book.
by the way.
What?
I need that journal back, but anyway, no, I just remembered. The thing is I thought you were going to be like an Albert Einstein. I was convinced of it. You were talking so early on.
Nope.
And then I think what proves out eventually is maybe the playing field levels at a later date. I mean,
like kids
you're
are
smart.
super.
There's no doubt. You're like weirdly smart, way beyond what I could ever comprehend some days.
Thank you.
But are you an Albert Einstein? No.
I'll take it where I can get it though.
Okay.
All right, so
We digress. This is
we
not about
digress,
Justin.
but there's a lot of untapped potential. Let's just look at it that way. So maybe you'll get there. So I guess in this case, this girl's going to be smart enough, and maybe by the time she's 8, she'll have some complex algorithm to make a bunch of money in the stock market, and she'll never have to pay any student loans. You're going to put that girl to work. All right, so let's segue into the next story, which has nothing to do with genius in terms of, because this is about cats, but it's about humans dealing with cats. And so I thought about this because we were in Chicago last weekend. Both of us, Cindy and I, were in, probably within a mile of each other, but in separate places, enjoying our times away from each other. And so... What? So
okay, let me just.
So
can I just stop that for 1 second? I was with my best friend since 5 years old, so I for sure was. I mean, that was like the whole premise of the weekend. So just to clarify,
I don't know why you're clarifying.
I don't know.
My statement still remains the same.
It does still remain the same.
All right.
So the point is, being in Chicago, there's this story that's been out for a couple of weeks that had seen, and this is a program that's been going on since 2012, but this is about, they just released a fresh batch of 1,000 feral cats on the streets to combat the rat problem.
Well, and this is crazy because I was at my girlfriend's who owns a house down there. So shout out to my besties since grade school. But she said these rats are huge. Like they'll just be sitting out front on the front porch and these giant rats that look like cats coming by. Yes, she said they're huge.
Those are just the cats.
That's insane.
I know.
I lived in Chicago for a little bit. I never saw a single rat. I only saw tiny little mice.
Chicago is notorious for one of the biggest
Where were they
rat
hiding
problems
from me?
in the entire country.
They just said they hit the #1 list on Orkin for the 6th time as the worst city of
For
infestation.
rats.
Then why didn't I see any rats?
Yeah, even when I would come to visit, it's not like I saw
pissed.
maybe like a few here and there on the train tracks, but
That's it.
other than
Ooh,
that,
they're gnarly.
I
well,
kinda
maybe the
like
cats
it.
are working.
So it says that.
There you go.
So it says that it's been working so far, and they get rescued, they get neutered and vaccinated, and then they kind of have a 3-week hiatus before they're ready to go out. So they're chilling in the salon. They're getting brushed, they're getting washed, they're fattening up, they're getting some juice to go out and kill some rats, I guess. So they want to make sure they're not stressed out before they go and do their jobs.
That's good.
So
every cat should be very well pampered before it goes out for the kill.
But the way it works is they have to be adopted by an owner. And they can't live indoors because they'll destroy the inside, and they're not meant for the indoors.
Well, they're feral. Yeah, they're outdoor cats. They're not. They don't want to be inside.
Right, so they won't take them in, but they do have a program so that this is coordinated, basically. So now it also says here that to fight infestations, that community members can request the assistance of colonies for a fee of $600 to $800. So, but there's
we could pay for a colony of cats.
Yeah, but there's a huge waiting list, so that's the problem. I guess they don't have all these cats on standby.
So, all right, my brain goes to you have all these cats out on the street, and then you have all this matter, fecal matter, and things that the cat has to release out of their body. How is that any healthier than rats running around?
Would you rather have a cat or a rat running around?
Well, I
both.
Not. Oh,
sorry.
I mean, personally. Neither.
Okay, but
I know it's not reality, but
trust me, if you saw rats running around, you'd be like, we need to get rid of these rats.
Yeah, okay.
Cats are badass. Like, we had two-timer, I did before I met you, with no claws. I rescued him. He was 17 pounds. He went down to 7 when Chase and I healed him, and he was lining up moles on the doormat. He was bringing in mice. He came out of the woods with a Gartner snake in his mouth. So they can do it. And so maybe I want to just end this thing here because I always end up going off on a really goofy end trail here at the end of these shows. No. But it does say here that the money that people do pay for to have them gives the cats crate rentals, heating pads, litter boxes, and heated water bowls. And then I was talking to a couple of these cats recently, and they told me that now they're working in the ability for these fees to be higher so they can pay off their student loans as well.
Unemployment for cats is at an all-time low.
There you go.
All right, well,
enough bad jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, bad jokes, but as long as I amuse myself, then I have nobody to blame but myself. All right, so that's going to end the podcast for this week, so thanks for tuning in. Please catch us again on Instagram at somm.podcast, and the same as we are now regularly posting to TikToks, and catch us on the YouTube. Otherwise, we will see you next week. So until then, I am David.
And I am Cindy.